Hello, my name is Lazarus Ember, and this is my first solo podcast. I'm recording a series of podcasts because I have an illness called motor neuron disease, or amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. They're usually just abbreviated to MND or ALS. My symptoms started back in 2013. I went to my GP in 2014, and I was finally diagnosed at the end of 2018. So I've been living with it for a few years. Many people are already dead at this stage from the illness. The doctors don't have any treatment, nothing effective. Really they have the tendency to stick their head in the sand because they don't know what to do, and their whole orientation in medicine and treatment is on a pharmaceutical basis based on double-blind randomized trials. And they don't use their logic, they don't think about what can we do even if we don't have this double-blind trial information. Because there's a lot of things that can be done to fight the illness. And in order to fight the illness successfully, it's necessary to do a lot of things. One of the most important things to do is to learn to rest properly. I talk with other people with MND on an ongoing basis. And not surprisingly, we experience a lot of stress. We've been going through our life doing whatever we were doing. For me, I was finishing off the raising of my son. He was 16 when I started to have some symptoms. And when he was 18, I was going back to college to do a master's in education so that I could teach children, teenagers, maths and philosophy. And during that course, which should have been a very easy course for me because I have a lot of experience in teaching, I like kids. My son's a boy and we had a very good relationship. And I'd been to college just a few years before that. So it wasn't a new environment for me to be in. And when I went to the college, I started to have a lot of difficulties which I didn't understand. I was having difficulties concentrating. I was having difficulties reading the timetable. I was having difficulties walking up steps to sit down in the lecture halls, getting on with people and communicating. Really a lot of problems. And at one stage, I had, following a medical procedure, I lost mobility in my foot again, and realized at that stage that I needed to get a handle on what my health issues were before I could really consider going on in education. I was hospitalized. I was in 2017. I was hospitalized for the first time due to the problems with mobility, and they did a lot of testing on me. They found motor neuron damage in my right leg. Even then, I was fighting it well. The following year, I was hospitalized another 3 or 4 times. The second test in February 2018 showed the motor neuron damage in my arms, and the test in November 2018 showed it in my neck with some symptoms of it in my head. So at that stage I'd already gotten used to the idea of being diagnosed with motor neuron disease, and it wasn't a shock. But I was dealing with the symptoms and the difficulties they were causing me, like stress and mobility. I was dealing with these symptoms long before I was diagnosed. Because it was a problem, I wasn't able to walk properly. I was having dropped foot, where one leg has the tendons and muscles have contracted a bit, so you don't hit the ground properly, and you make this slap sound because the heel doesn't meet the ground. A friend of mine gave me an exercise, which I'll talk about in another video, which allowed me to counter that. And I was taking some supplements which helped me as well. I never expected to have a chronic illness. I was a fairly healthy person. I was used to taking responsibility for my life. I lived quite an autonomous life, making what decisions that I wanted to make and carrying them out. And I feel that I was very happy with who I was and what I was doing and how I'd lived. And the shock of having something going chronically wrong was devastating for several reasons. One, because there was a huge interruption in me living my life, and it has been. It's very much destroyed who I was. And one of the effects of the illness itself was an emotional damage. So my emotions didn't work like they used to. In the past, it was easy for me to get on with people. Of course, there was people I didn't get on with, but it wasn't an issue. It didn't cause me any grief or stress. I just didn't get on with somebody. I just got on with my life. So it wasn't really a problem. So having emotions which are out of their usual pattern was very difficult to cope with, and it still is. I wondered if it was a psychosomatic illness, even though it didn't make any sense to me. I had done a lot of inner work in myself with meditation, and I come from an alcoholic family, so I worked doing counseling and therapy on the issues that I developed from growing up in a dysfunctional home. So I was used to working with my own interior reality, but still I put a lot of energy into resolving any outstanding issues, and it was great to do that. It made me freer to deal with the problems of motor neuron disease. I'm not going to tell everything in this short session. I just want to introduce myself and to tell you that I am reversing the illness. Most people are dead within 2 years of being diagnosed. In Ireland, a lot of people are dead within 1 year of being diagnosed. This is due to a deliberate policy of late diagnosis. One doctor even told me he wouldn't diagnose me until I'd lost the ability to walk. Now that is another story, but it made me very keen on fighting the illness myself, because waiting for the doctors to do something was a complete waste of time. I'm reversing the illness. I'm increasing my strength. I'm increasing my weight. I'm increasing the energy that I have available. Even my memory and mental operations are improving. I have a long way to go, and I would love to be well enough to operate and function in the world like anybody else, to go back and work and live. For the last 5 years, I've really been struggling with the illness and its effects. Really, I've been struggling with dying. Even before I was diagnosed, I was fighting a degenerative condition. I was fighting the loss of mobility. I was fighting fatigue, fighting. And I was getting worse. And for a good period, I was fluctuating. I'd be fighting and then I'd get worse and I'd get a little bit better. The illness would fluctuate a lot. I didn't really have my fight tuned in. This winter has just passed. It's now February 2021. And this is the best winter I've had since 2015. This is the first time in 5 years that I feel like I'm not dying. So I've learned a few things about healing. And that's why I want to do this series of Lazarus talks on healing, specifically motor neuron disease. But a lot of what I have to say is global. And one of the most important things in order to heal is to be able to rest. If we can't rest, then our body doesn't go into a state where it can recover. And in order to rest, we need to deal with our psychological problems and we need to deal with our physical problems. We may need to deal with mental health issues. We may have spiritual questions which we need to find a way of living with. It's not necessary that we have to answer all the questions. We need to learn to be able to engage with our questions and our difficulties in an open and healthy way. When we learn to do that, even if we're not winning the fight, we have a certain degree of peace within ourselves, a degree of acceptance. So I hope you'll look at and listen to these videos and learn something useful for yourself.